As one of the longest-running shooter franchises in the world, Battlefield has taken its players through well over 100 different maps and locations. An impressive feat for any franchise, but out of those many maps, only a few of them really stand out as truly iconic. Today, we're going to take a look at those maps and see exactly why they were so impactful and how they've influenced generations of Battlefield gamers. So why not begin with one of the most popular maps from one of the most influential titles in the franchise. I'm of course talking about Battlefield 3's Caspian Border. This map brought it all. Tanks, planes, helicopters, gameplay for all classes, and of course the first hint of Levolution. A massive radio tower could collapse during a round and would take out tanks or even aircraft caught in its path. Combat would literally stop momentarily as players just had to gawk at the sheer destruction of the event. Each team had an HQ complete with an airfield and anti-air gun, and the rounds would begin with everyone spawning at the HQ and rushing to get into a vehicle. Now, controlling the center of the map was one of the best and hardest things to do. It gave teams an elevated hill to attack other points from, but it was also one of the most difficult points to hold, attracting attack helicopters and tanks. The outskirts of the map were considerably more open with some rolling hills and fields, allowing for more armored combat and even sniping. Caspian kinda became the representative map for Battlefield 3, with such a great variety of gameplay, resulting in vastly different rounds of conquest from one round to another. The map was remade for Battlefield 4 with the Second Assault DLC, which brought some interesting changes, like a massive concrete wall replacing the chain link border fence. This wall could also be destroyed in chunks, and the massive radio tower would now fall directly across the map, opening up new pathways and cover. Battlefield 2042 brought this map back again, remastering the Battlefield 3 variation. And while the layout is mostly identical to the past version, the visuals have been improved in subtle ways. Hopefully this map continues to see more remasters in the future. Next up is a map that became known as the meat grinder to many. Ever wonder what 64 players crammed into a Paris subway tunnel would play like? Well, Operation Metro answers that question, and is pure chaos. That's what it plays like. Absolute insane chaos. Battlefield 3 first introduced this map in the alpha of the game, showcasing the rush game mode as one team started out in a nice park, which quickly became an insane bloodbath. And in the game's alpha, the map actually had an APC for the attackers to start out with, which was later removed to become an infantry-only experience from start to finish. Once past the park objective, the fight goes underground from a bombed-out crater leading into the subway, and that's where the crazy corridor fights begin. Rockets, grenades, snipers, machine guns, everything goes in Metro, and it quickly became an experience completely different from the traditional Battlefield formula. And frankly, on paper, this map shouldn't have worked. 2 to 3 lanes with 64 players is mathematically a disaster, but somehow this map became one of the most popular for its mindless, non-stop infantry combat. The Battlefield 4 remake of Metro made some very subtle changes to the map, adding one new flanking route, which really didn't make a huge difference in the overall gameplay or flow. Nonetheless, it once again became a fan favorite. But Battlefield 5's Operation Underground map took the now classic Metro formula to a whole new level in visual style. Set in World War II, the developers decided to reimagine the Metro concept, creating a cool city fight that led into the Metro area, which now had expanded lanes and overlooks, improving the gameplay massively. While playing on Breakthrough, the round would end at a large town hall building and plaza fight, which actually played fantastically. This was one of my favorite maps in Battlefield 5 and was an excellent example of improving upon an old concept. The next map on this list is one that veterans of the franchise know well, and despite multiple remakes, it hasn't been seen in a Battlefield game for over 10 years, and that map is Strike at Karkand. A map which originally debuted in Battlefield 2, this one offered a Middle Eastern city fight with a mostly linear layout, multiple elevations, and limited vehicle gameplay. The building fights were insane to say the least. It was a fun map in Battlefield 2, but the entire concept was massively improved for the rework with Battlefield 3 and its insane destruction. Most of the windows and apartments could be blown out, giving tanks and rocket wielders a new sense of power. The map played really well for the most part, though rounds could sometimes become choke pointed at the bridge crossing, separating teams on each side of the water until somebody was somehow able to sneak by. Battlefield Online and Battlefield Play for Free also remade this map, along with a futuristic version in Battlefield 2142 where it features a snowy environment. This map is definitely top of my list of maps that I would like to see remastered in pretty much any title going forward. Now, the next level on the list only released in Battlefield 4, but it's possibly one of the most iconic maps ever. It was heavily featured in marketing trailers and pretty much became synonymous with the "Only in Battlefield" slogan. And that's of course Battlefield 4's Siege of Shanghai. This map basically sold players on the concept of levolution, which were massive destruction events that could be triggered by the players. And Siege of Shanghai was one of the biggest, showcasing the gargantuan skyscraper crumbling down and falling into the water. And after that event was triggered, the map would get covered in gray ash, completely changing the feeling of combat. And aside from the main destruction feature, the map actually played out in really fun ways. Infantry could take elevators or helicopters up to the rooftops and parachute glide across the map to other locations. Building top snipers were ever present, and of course the helicopters were always hunting them down. This map is pretty much what you might think of when imagining a modern day Metropolis fight, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. Hopefully we get to see a remake of this now classic map soon. Now, last on my list, but certainly not least, is the original Battlefield map. First played with the Battlefield 1942 demo, Wake Island truly was the ultimate showcase of everything possible in the first Battlefield game. Aircraft carriers, landing craft, tanks, planes, torpedo planes, anti-air emplacements, this was the map that made Battlefield look good. Based on the World War II Battle of Wake Island, the horseshoe-shaped map offered some honestly weird gameplay flow that seemed to change pretty much every time it was remade, and it's been remade a lot. Battlefield 2 made it modern, Battlefield 2142 froze it, Battlefield Heroes cartooned it, Battlefield Online basically had the Battlefield 2 version, Battlefield 3 added in destruction, and Battlefield 5 took it to a new level visually. And each one just played out differently. Battlefield 5's remake is probably one of my favorite versions of the map, even though the sides are switched, which is not historically accurate. The map saw a huge visual upgrade, a complete reimagining of its objective points, and some incredibly fun gameplay, especially when played on the breakthrough mode, which offered a completely different experience compared to the original Conquest Assault mode. And I think a good argument could be made that the layout of the map isn't really ideal for Conquest, but it hasn't stopped this map from being fun in pretty much every single variation. Now, I could go on and on and on and on because there's so many good and popular maps in Battlefield's history. St. Quentin Scar, Amiens, Gulf of Oman, Damavon Peak, Grand Bazaar, Arica Harbor. But what maps are the most iconic to you? Obviously, this list is my personal selection based on 20 plus years of playing Battlefield games, but I want to know what sticks in your mind when you think of Battlefield. What maps or gameplay do you reminisce about the most? Also, next, you should click on this video here to see the forgotten features of Battlefield. Third-person cameras, Yamato battleships, tons of cool things you may have not known about Battlefield's past. And as always, thanks for watching. This is LevelCap, signing off.